Labor leader Bill Shorten says he's a Christian, an Anglican, but today he tried to make the faith of Prime Minister Scott Morrison, Pentecostal Christian, an election issue. See, yesterday Morrison was asked about Rugby Australia trying to sack Israel Folau for quoting the Bible, which clearly says gays go to hell. He was asked if he himself believed that. Morrison gave an evasive reply.
I support the law of the country, and I always don't mix my religion with politics and my faith with politics, and it's always been something that has informed how I live my life.
You could argue that Morrison's answer is indeed all that voters need to know, because whatever he privately thinks of gays as Prime Minister, he doesn't give any sign of hatred or disapproval. Good. But Bill Shorten today tried to prosecute Morrison for what he thought were Morrison's private Christian beliefs.
I cannot believe that the Prime Minister has not immediately said that gay people will not go to hell.
Now, later today, Morrison did clarify his views on whether gays went to hell or else he changed them.
I already made a statement on that earlier today. It is not my view that that's the case. And, you know, my faith is about that God's love is for everybody.
And he was quite scathing about what he called the grubby tactics of Bill Shorten, raising religion instead of something practical involving the voters. Joining me is the panel, Liberal Senator James Paterson and Labor Senator Kimberley Kitching. Why attack what Scott Morrison may privately believe about gays?
Because this is about I think there is a genuine issue around the leadership and what the values of leaders. I think that is actually what really elections are all about. And I think that what Scott Morrison did was give an evasive answer the day before on Monday, and you know, it left room open to say, well, maybe he does actually think gays should go to hell. Have
you seen any evidence that he hates gays or is going to pass laws discriminating?
I think that was the question that was then raised, because there wasn't a clear answer. That no, and of course, I mean, when you think about it,
the answer's no.
Well, but Andrew, when you think about it, what we are seeing here is an issue that really shouldn't actually be being discussed, and I don't think Bill was. I don't think Bill was actually attacking that. I think what happened was that Scott Morrison didn't give an answer. And remember, there's a lot of Protestants who don't actually believe in the concept of hell.
Well, there's a lot of people.
There's a very complicated theological question around this.
And they don't believe it. They don't believe the word of Christ himself. And I speak as an agnostic, quoting Matthew 25:41-43. "Depart from me, you who are accursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels." What do you make of what happened today?
Andrew, in a free, secular, liberal democracy like Australia, the private religious beliefs of political leaders should not be on the ballot. There are some countries that do conduct their elections in large part on the basis of the religious beliefs of their leaders, and no Australian in their right mind would want to emulate those kind of political systems.
But what about Kimberley's question? It was an evasive answer yesterday. Well, does Bill Shorten have a right to jump all over it and say, what about your private beliefs?
I think Bill Shorten showed a real lack of leadership here. He's someone who could be Prime Minister in a few days, and he made what I regard as a very grubby attempt to politicise the presumed religious beliefs of Scott Morrison without evidence. The only issues that should be on the ballot at the election, Andrew, are the policy platforms being put forward by the parties, and I want to explain carefully why. Scott Morrison is a deeply devout Christian. I am an agnostic. We operate in the same party room. We come to agreement with all our other colleagues on the policy platform we come forward. My religious belief or lack thereof does not enter into it, nor does Scott Morrison's, and we have to be judged on that platform we put forward, not on anything else.
Now, for me, the real issue that I find interesting, since Bill Shorten is raising religions, whether he is in fact a Christian. Here's his own answer to that question, do gays go to hell?
I don't think if you're gay, you're going to go to hell. I don't know if hell exists, actually, but I don't think if it does, that being gay is what sends you there.
Now, if you don't believe in hell, then you don't believe in heaven. The whole architecture of Christianity comes crumbling.
I don't think that's right, Andrew. I don't think it's appropriate to say that Bill is a fake Christian or that he is...
He's raising religion.
Yes, and it is not... There are lots and lots of Christians who don't believe in hell. So if you go to the Pew Research Centre, a highly respected research entity that looks at these sorts of questions, they will say America, a far more overtly religious society than ours, perhaps. You know, there's a lot of... But they... In that, 30% of Christians do not believe in hell. So the concept of hell, and remember, the concept of hell
do you believe in hell?
Has had a checkered...
Do you believe in hell?
Well, I think that not for... I certainly don't believe in...
Do you believe there's a place called hell, however you define it?
I think,
however,
yes,
you know, whether there's flames or no flames, do you believe there's a place
flames,
called
no
hell?
flames, whether you are removed from God's presence, that's another idea
There
of
is a hell. Just say
but
yes.
I do.
That's what I'm saying.
And I would say that, you know, Jean-Paul Sartre, who was in fact an atheist, said, "L'enfer, c'est les autres." Hell is other people. Now, some might take
Hell
that.
is
That
also
might be the
a
Liberal
global
Party
warming
room.
evangelist sitting,
Liberal Party room, you know, in Kuwait. But what I would say to you is that that does not make the fact that someone does not believe in hell does not make them not
If
a
you're
Christian.
telling me that 1/3
There
of
are
Americans are supermarket Christians, I'm not going to fall over with surprise. The Bible is quite explicit. There is a hell. The Word of God himself, the Word of Christ himself says there is a hell. And it strikes me that Bill Shorten just didn't want to be seen as judgmental enough to believe in hell.
Well, Andrew, I'm not very well qualified to judge Bill Shorten's faith or anyone else's. As I've said before, and I'm in the same boat as you, I'm personally agnostic. And I'm not really interested in whether Bill Shorten is a good Christian or a bad Christian or what sort of Christian he is. That's a matter for him to deal with his own conscience, and it really shouldn't be a matter of public debate or certainly an election issue.
He raised it. That's what I'm saying. He raised it and he said it up there.
And I don't think it's appropriate to question his faith. I don't think anyone would question Scott Morrison's faith. He invited cameras into his church on, you know, at Easter. I would never question his faith, and I don't think it's appropriate.
I find it extraordinary
to
that a
question
professing
Bill
Anglican
Shorten's
doesn't
faith
believe in
either.
hell, and then I've got to ask, does he believe in heaven? I mean, this is just extraordinary to me. But anyway, look, that's for him. But he raised the religion issue, and I'm going to run with it as a consequence. Listen. If there is a hell, I imagine that one of the imps down there might look a little bit like the bloke I'm going to discuss now, Paul Keating, the former Labor Prime Minister. He was projecting today, I thought, attacking Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton for being nasty while himself being vicious. Here he is.
I joined the Australian Parliament 50 years ago this year, you know. In those 50 years, I've never seen any public figure as mean or mean-spirited as Peter Dutton. And at this election, those electors in Dixon have a chance to drive a political stake through his dark political heart.
Mean-spirited, but let's drive a stake through his dark political heart. And it looked to me like he was actually reading those words carefully written for maximum effect.
No doubt, Andrew. And here's the secret about Paul Keating's post-politics political persona. The left cannot uncritically embrace his record because on the economic front, on the one hand, it was disastrous from a budget management point of view, but from a microeconomic reform point of view, it was actually quite free market. He embraced lower tariffs, lower taxes, financial market deregulation, even workplace relations deregulation. So the left can't celebrate that. All they can celebrate about Paul Keating is the invective and the abuse that he hurls at their political opponents. And it amazes me how otherwise thoughtful, intelligent people just love to celebrate this actually quite personal abuse that Paul Keating engages in.
Well, maybe he's just
and
the Labor's Donald Trump. Then gives the same sort of thrill. Labor's Donald Trump.
Oh, I don't think...
What do you think of that abuse?
Look, I think what we saw was vintage PJK. And I think that, I actually think that, in fact, the reason we've had 28 years of continuous growth is because of the economic reforms that the Hawke-Keating government started.
I'm a supporter of some of those reforms, and I wish this Liberal government was...
I'm very happy to give credit where credit's due for some of the very important reforms that Hawke and Keating implemented. But my eyes nearly rolled out of my head when I heard Kimberley say this is vintage PJK. Like every Labor supporter,
let me put it this way, or let me put the question this way that you neatly sidestepped away. If I said what I really would like is for someone to drive a stake through the heart of Julia Gillard, not that I'd ever say that I'd just drive a stake through a wicked...
People did say,
and I
they said dreadful things
I condemned it. Yes, and you condemned it. Why won't you condemn this?
And I think that I don't think we need to drive a stake through Peter Dutton's heart. I think we're quietly confident in Dixon that Ali France will be successful. But
this is the kind of rhetoric that should be condemned.
There are some politicians who get white line fever, and I would say that, you know, there are some politicians, including Peter Dutton, who have said some pretty personal things
Like that?
about people in Parliament.
Honestly, if I said that about Julia Gillard, you would not hear the end of it.
Or if I said it about Anthony Albanese or any of the other celebrated heroes of the left, that kind of violent political imagery that Paul Keating likes to engage in should be condemned, should be put aside. And, I mean, it's something that you would never see John Howard say about his political opponents.
That's the
Whatever
thing,
criticism you
different
have about his
class.
policies,
John Howard, Paul Keating.
he would never speak about a political opponent like that.
And Bob Hawke, I would also put.
I agree with that.
You know, not quite as gentlemanly as John Howard, but a good guy in that sense. But there's something about Paul Keating, sulphurous, that I think is the
Well, there's lots of sulphur.
is the whiff that I'm catching here.
There's lots of sulphur in hell.
Exactly right. Kimberley, Kitching and James Paterson, thank you so much to you both. More after the break.
Thank you.